What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We've teamed up with Haiboxing for another instructional video with the HBX Protector. Today we're going to be looking at a few parts here. We're going to be looking at the Servo Saver. We're also going to be looking at the steering post and the Steering Ackerman Plate. Alright, so first things first, let's just flip this around. We're going to pull the two body clips. We're going to lift up the body here and take a look at the servo and the Servo Saver, I guess. So your servo is right there. Your Servo Saver is connected to it. And all that is basically the part that the linkage, the steering linkage here hooks up to. And that just controls your steering. So all we're going to do is we're just going to remove that screw. I believe there's a spring and a plastic sleeve that will come out with it. And then we just got to remove this linkage here off of the ball stud that is screwed into the Servo Saver. We'll start by just taking that top screw out right here. And you just need a Phillips screwdriver for that. Just a little precision screwdriver. And we're just going to be careful that we do not lose any parts here. So as we're taking them off, we're having a look at what we're removing. Okay, so that all just comes out of place. There's the screw that came out. There's a spring. And that little like sleeve is what I was calling it. Okay, so now that we have that all separated, we just got to remove that little ball socket here, the little ball stud from the linkage. And that's not too hard. If you kind of just pinch each side of that steering linkage right there, try to get a closer view here for you, all you got to do is kind of twist it upwards and it'll separate. Alright, so I'm not 100% sure if the new Servo Saver comes with a ball stud. If you grab a 7/32 socket, and that seems to fit the best, it's easy to remove just like that. You can just unscrew it and reuse that part easily in the new Servo Saver. So we'll put that aside, keep all our parts together there. That's the Servo Saver. Not too difficult to remove. We'll show you how to put that back together now. So to put that back together, your new Servo Saver, we're going to assume does not come with that ball stud. So that is what you have. You have the arm, the spring, and that little sleeve that comes in the bottom there. It's like your little, let's call it like a pivot sleeve. So first thing we're going to do is, assuming that the new arm here on the Servo Saver does not come with a ball stud, you can just kind of start that by hand, because you've already taken it out of the old one. Get your 7/32 socket and just finish it off there. Screw that in all the way. And one thing I didn't mention here, this little linkage here, it is adjustable. You can turn it in or out. I've left it exactly the same. There should be no reason why we need to adjust that in or out when replacing this Servo Saver. So we've got the ball stud back on, which will be like that. Our next step is we had this little sleeve come in the bottom, which if you can see, it's kind of contoured and shaped to fit in to the arm like so. And then we have a spring that just pushes in like that. Not too difficult. And now all we do is we slip it over top like so. I don't believe we need to hook up that linkage yet. We can leave that linkage until we get the Servo Saver in. So I'm just going to take the screw now and we're going to line it over top. We have that spring there that fits through, and then we're just going to screw it into the top of the servo while holding that arm, just so we're not turning the servo. And there we go. That's that. And now I believe we can take that linkage. I'm just holding it. I'm going to try to get it in view. I apologize, it's hard to keep everything in view of the camera. We'll get a little closer here. You can see the steering servo's in, your little ball stud's right there, and now we need to get this little linkage here attached to the ball stud. So I'm just going to take that linkage, fit it over top, and I'm just going to pinch it with my fingers until it snaps into place. Just like that. Not too much pressure. It was quite easy. And there. We're back. We're hooked up again. Looking good. Alright, so now we're going to be looking at the steering post and the steering Ackerman plate. Alright, so our best bet here is, I think, to take off the front hood here. 6 screws. We've got 4 small screws and 2 bigger screws. The 4 small screws are your 2 fronts, your 2 backs, and the larger screws are your 2 center screws. Word of advice, don't lose these screws. Put them somewhere where you're going to be able to see them. I'm just going to get a little piece of white paper here and put them on because I'm working on a black bench, but these screws are pretty small and are easy to lose. So we're going to get these 6 screws out, and then we'll be seeing what we got under the hood here. Alright, so now that we've got the top hood off, for the purpose of this video, you don't necessarily need to do this, but if you have big hands like me or a hard time seeing, you might want to do this. We're going to take off the body here. So we're going to start by removing the LED lights. Right there, just that little plug. And I believe we just got a screw on either side of the hinge point here. And this is going to make it a lot easier for me to show you what's happening here. So this is a screw on either side. I've released the one side. Just going to release the other side here. Okay, so we're going to take the body off there, and this is going to allow me to let you have a little bit better view here. Alright, so now that we've got the cover off, we've got a way better view of what we're doing here. There's our steering post right there. We got one on either side. And on the bottom here, your steering Ackerman plate, and that's just that arched plate on the bottom that attaches both sides of steering together. So first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove, at least this is how I would do it, the Servo Saver. And we already know how easy that is, so we'll start by removing that top screw there. And we got that spring, that little sleeve or little guide there. So we'll put that aside. We're going to have to remove, just like before, a little stud there from the linkage. Not a big deal. And now we're going to have to remove the other side of that linkage. And not a big deal. If you give a little bit of upward pressure like that, it'll pop right out. Okay, I suggest not messing around with this and just putting it down, and don't even bother adjusting it. Everything should fit in just the same way as it came out. Okay, now what I'd like to do is I want to remove the linkage here on either side. There's a screw right there on the end link there on either side. Let's remove that. We're going to be doing both sides kind of at the same time here. So you just need to unscrew that, and then we can just slide that linkage out of the way like so. And I'll turn it around here so we get a view of this side. And same thing here. We're going to slide that linkage out as soon as we unscrew it here. There we go. And now that exposes our steering post there on that side and that side. So now we're going to have to get that out. And I believe there's some kind of pin or metal guide inside that post. So it's not like we're just going to be able to pull it out. We have our upper deck here. And that's our upper deck, kind of like the frame on the top here. And we've got 6 screws. 1, 2, let me get it in view here. So we've got 2 screws there, and 2 screws there. So we got 6 screws, and I'd like to remove those next. So we got 2 at the front here that we'll remove. And we're just going to put those screws down together so we don't lose them. That would be awful if we lost screws here and couldn't find them. So we got those 2, and then we got these 2 center screws here. That these 2 screws actually screw directly into the steering post. one on either side. I'll give you a look here. Try to give you a look. So these two screws here in the center that I'm taking out, these are what directly screw into the top of the steering post. And then from there, we've got two screws right here, one right beside the servo and one opposite of that. I'll give you a look at that. So we got a screw here right beside the servo and then one right here. We're going to remove those two screws. Alright, so we've got our 6 screws out of the upper deck. We've removed the linkage here from the actual steering post. Right there, we've taken our Servo Saver off and removed the linkage from the ball stud that's connected to the post there. And once we've done that, that really is all you need to do if you're just changing the steering Ackerman arm. And let me show you. So our Ackerman arm is right there. All we have to do to remove that now is just expose. You can lift up a little bit there, slide that. You can kind of get it out there. If you lift up on the upper deck a bit, we'll see if we get a better view from this side. If you just lift up a little bit like that, that Ackerman arm, the Ackerman plate, sorry. So if you just lift up a little bit on the arm like that, that Ackerman plate will just slide right out. And we should be able just to manipulate it out of its place there. There. That's your steering Ackerman plate. And if that's all you were changing, if that's all that was broken and you're changing, then that's all we need to do. But we need to show you how to remove the steering post as well. So the next step here that I'm going to do is remove the servo. We've got 4 screws. We just kind of want to get it out of the way. Not a big deal. And the reason I'm doing that is because there's a cross plate on that upper deck that gets caught up on the servo when we're going to be removing those steering posts. So we've got 4 screws on the servo, and these screws are pretty easy to distinguish from the other screws. These ones have kind of like your oversized head on them. Take a look here. See, they've got that oversized kind of washer built into them. So I'm just going to pop that servo and just kind of stick it to the side. There's no need to unplug it or anything right now. So now that allows that cross plate, but we still got a little bit of an issue here. There's also another plate here, and that's kind of there, I believe, to keep this upper deck in place, but we can kind of manipulate around that. If you just kind of push it a little bit, that'll get it around, and this should create enough space now, just like that, to remove these steering posts. So there's our one steering post right there. That's our left-hand side one. And there's our other steering post. That was very easy to take out. And yes, you can see they have these guides here, metal guides. So you must create enough space to be able to lift them over top of those guides. So that's all it is. And again, we did look at this earlier. If your replacement parts do not come with the ball studs, which I do not believe they do, 7/32 socket, you can remove it. Or you can look into purchasing some new ball studs. They're available. Check out the manual for that. They're in there. Alright, so now we're going to put everything back together. We're going to install our new steering posts here. Man, not a big deal. Don't be intimidated by it. It's just reverse order from what we did to take it apart. So the upper deck here, create a little space. And then you're just going to slide the center of that steering post over top like so, and that's it. New steering post is on that side. We'll bring it over this way now. Okay, so now it's time to get our Ackerman plate into position. We have our steering post here, and this is on the servo side. This Ackerman plate is where the arm from the steering post here attaches to, and the screw that goes through the linkage here is what goes into this hole here and holds everything together. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, first of all, kind of get this Ackerman plate into where it goes. I go through the bottom and come up and just kind of let it rest on top of the frame. Then we can put our steering post in. Slide that over top of that pin. And now I just kind of line it up and get that steering post over top of the Ackerman plate. Like that. And we can probably get that steering linkage into place now as well. We're making no adjustments, we're just straight up changing the parts out. So we shouldn't have too much of a problem with anything not lining up after we're done here. Okay, so now that we've got our linkage kind of lined up over top, we have these screws. These are the longest screws that you'll be dealing with today. So just make sure you're putting the proper screws in there. Slide it through that little opening there on the linkage. Turn that post out to where you can get easy access to it. And just kind of line everything up over top. Your screwdriver, I'm sorry if it's not in view, we're just starting the screw right now. And we're just going to screw that in. Kind of just support it here so we can have a good look at it. And there, that side is in. We're hooked up to the Ackerman plate on the bottom. We're going to turn it around here to the other side now. Now we've already put that steering post in right there. Our Ackerman plate is there. We're just going to turn the opposite wheel out so we can get a view of the Ackerman plate coming through right here. And we're just going to take that post now, line it up with the Ackerman plate, and just line it up over top there. We'll bring the linkage into place now. We've got our screw. We'll get our screw run through the linkage there, through the steering post and into that Ackerman plate. There, that is back together. We're great there. Now we can kind of look at putting this upper deck back down like that, and it just kind of get it into place. There we go. Now we've got 6 screws for that we took out, which means we've got 6 screws to put back in. So let's put those 6 screws back in. Alright, so that's our 6 screws in the upper deck. They're all in, that's great. We have the linkage all hooked up now. So both wheels turn. We got our ball stud right there. Next step would be put that servo back in. That servo came out with 4 screws, and those are the screws that have the oversized head with like kind of the built-in washer there. We'll get those back in. I'm not going to tighten those up all the way. We're going to get all 4 screws in, and then we'll get them snugged up. There we go. That's back in. Great. So now we're going to put the Servo Saver back together. So the Servo Saver, right there is the arm. That bottom little sleeve here that kind of fits in. Perfect. That can all go over top. We can put that linkage on now too. You can just snap that linkage onto that ball stud like so. You can even do that to the other side as well right now. Snap it over top there, a little pressure, and it'll snap right into place. Throw your Servo Saver onto the top of the servo. We have our spring and our screw to go in next. We'll just snug that up now. There we go. Everything looks great there. Alright guys, well, Servo Saver, that's pretty easy. Not too difficult. No need to be intimidated by that. And the steering post and the Ackerman plate, not too bad, a little more in depth, but if you stay organized on the bench, and you just kind of take it step by step. It's not too bad. So let's get this back together. Let's get everything looking like a protector again. All right, so let's get this back together. We're going to start with the hood here. Kind of just push that down, keep a little pressure on it so we stay lined up. And we're going to take our 2 longer screws, because these are the ones that kind of connect it to the frame underneath. As long as those are lined up, we'll be good. Get one in, then we'll get that other one here. A little pressure down so we stay lined up. There, and that keeps everything in place. Now we've got these 4 little screws to put in. 2 on the front here. And 2 on the back of the hood. Those 4 screws are the same size, so you don't have to worry about mixing those up. It's just these 2 center ones are longer and larger in diameter. Okay, so the hood's on now. Let's get that main body back on. We've got the 2 screws, one on either side, that go through the framework here and into here, and that creates our pivot point. So if we kind of just line that up into place there, kind of get our screw in there and lined up, we can take our screwdriver here and we can screw it in the rest of the way. I'll turn it around here to the other side so we can see this side go in. Get our screw. We'll line everything up here. And screw it in. There. Now we're pivoting again. And we'll have to take that LED plug here and we'll plug that back in. And I usually actually use a little precision screwdriver just to make sure that plug is seated properly. So we think we're good. We've got everything back together. We're like, yeah, right on. So let's power it up. We got our batteries in. We power it up there. Our transmitter is all set up, and we hit the button there, or the switch, and our wheels are now off. Now, for minor adjustments, it's cool to use the steering trim right on there, right? And we can almost get that to where we need to, but it's like we're using the full steering trim there. So set the steering trim on your transmitter right to dead center, right there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to right where it's at now we can see that Servo Saver is kind of not 90 degrees where we want it. I'll try to get a view here. You can see it's kind of on an angle. So I'm going to turn it off here, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to attempt to correct this. We shouldn't have to make any adjustments to any of the linkage. Everything's going in the same way it came out. The parts are all the same size. So I'm taking that top screw out, and we're just going to pull that Servo Saver off the top of the servo. We're going to fire it up here, and that would self-center your servo now. We can turn it a couple times here on the transmitter, and it brings it back to center. So in theory, if we brought those wheels back now, where we want them there, we should be in good shape to stick that Servo Saver now on a 90-degree angle, and ideally things will be good. Now we've got to be able to screw this screw in without moving the servo. So if we kind of pinch that side of the Servo Saver there, and screw it in, hopefully we should be good now. Let me show you. Okay, so everything centers out where it should be. All right, guys, that's about it for this one. If you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button before you head out. And remember, don't be a stranger. We'll see you on the next one. See ya.